Okay, well, the first thing obviously I need to do is to put the drawing down. Now that is the drawing that that I've actually produced in pen, which gives you an idea of where we're going. We've got distance, we've got the tree. So let me put a little of the drawing down. If you bring that down to there, then you've got no perspective. The further you bring that out, the lower down you'll appear to look into the subject. The more you bring that out, the lower down you would appear. The more they're pulled together, the more you're looking down onto the subject instead of into the subject. So that's the key to it, keeping these angles nice and wide in the foreground. So that's basically that. I'm going to start off with, let me come here. I'm going to start off actually with the main tree. Start off with your foreground trees and then sit the other trees as you go away into the distance. That way, your main part, which is the foreground trees, are positioned right. So I'm going to start with this large tree here, which is standing about there. It's got a lovely ivy covered trunk, which I actually think is quite a feature of a tree. Not always the sort of thing that is good for the tree, so I'm led to believe, but it runs up the lower part of the trunk. Then we have quite a wide branch, and that streaks off like that. The main part of the trunk heads off up like that. That does split there, so let's just pull up another area there like that. And then of course we've got the branch running out to the left. So that's basically the main tree, you know. We can add branches if we wish later on. There's not a problem with that. Then we have a bit of distance there, right, and then that heads off like that. I'm going to have a secondary area of distance there, and really that denotes those the foliage along the edge of the track. So that virtually hangs like that. So that's the edge of the track. That's within the depth of the wood, and then you've got the odd tree coming up in the distance. Now I'm going to put in that tree, and that's going to be broken up by the fact that we've got branches hanging over that trunk. I've made that quite narrow because it's got a branch coming off like that. Let's bring another branch off there. Yeah, let's bring a branch down there like that. Then we've got another tree here. Technically that one should stand a little closer than that one. So I'm going to put that in like that. And that one has a branch that heads off up there like that. Try and make, and that goes into the canopy of the wood. Try and make your trees, when you draw them simply, because you can always add branches. If you draw them with too much detail, then the problem is you end up with trying to paint them with detail, and then everything gets all fussy, it all gets complicated, and particularly more in the foreground now, you start putting in shapes of leafing. I don't want to get into that sort of detail. I purely want to give an impression. It's capturing the light through the leafing rather than painting the leafing in the tree itself. So that's the key to that. And then I've not done a drawing there, because if you notice, see how that light mists in that side. So we've got no edge there. We've got edges here and we've got an edge there. So that's the edge to that, and that's the edge to that tree, but we've got no edge there. So the sky will be pulled into that, and the foliage will be softened in against the sky. So that's pretty much it. We've got another, let's have another little tree there of some sort. Don't know quite what these are, but we don't really care. We're not really worried what they are. Really, the main thing is that they give a lovely sort of foreground area, put 3 in. That's a good number. Pretty much that is all the drawing that you really need to start. Up, then they get nice and supple, so you can pick them out the palette quite easily. You could use from the tube, obviously, but I like to have a little bit of hardness there, otherwise you pick up so much paint straight from the tube. Some artists work like that, but right, now I'm going to use a fairly large mop brush that points, purely to damp the background. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm doing. I'm damping the background just like that, and keeping an even area of water. I'm working, as you can see, at an angle, which does cause some problems, but you would be working obviously at about 15 degrees, so the water would soak in a lot quicker. But in general, this is basically the sort of thing you need to do. And I'm pulling that right the way down. As I said, there's no edge there, so that's going to be finished there. So we don't mind how much water we put on that, because that's got to remain, that's got to be hanging around for a while. So let's put plenty of water to that. Then I'm picking around, you can see a hard edge there. So I'm picking around that into the distance, because that's our far distance. I've got to get some blurred edges there. Then we get to the edge of the wood. At the moment I'm painting over the ivy area, but I won't soon. I will be having a little bit of edging there. And just watch, if you are working at an angle, just that you don't get too much running. That's it. Good. So far so good. I've only put the water on, you know, but I can't go too far. That's nice water, yes, yes. Yeah, I have used water from the water butt, Jerry, in the past. Yeah, it's a magic water, you see. You know, it's something that I don't normally tell people, but this is Essex water, you know, lime scale, everything you get in there, you know. Good, so that's that. Nice and damp. Now obviously as you lay your colour on, you're going to damp the paper as well. So first thing we need, if you look very closely, it's very light, very bright, that side. And I've actually printed that off, not in the highest quality, but it's a tonal plus colourful, so I can just get an idea. The rest of it I can do myself. I can make it up as I go along. Right, so the first thing we're going to do, cadmium lemon. There we go, look at that, lovely lemon. And I'm putting cadmium red with that, because I want that to be, ooh, what are we doing, a sunset? Let's just weaken that off. There we are, look at that. Look how lovely and bright that is. In many ways, the lighter, you've got to remember, colours dry much lighter in watercolour. So a bit more red in there. There we go. Just a tad more red. That's it. A nice bit of red. Then we end up with an orange colour right in this lower area there, where all the bright colour is. Just have a little bit more red. A little bit darker red there, pull that across, there we are, and down into the distance, not too much at that point, there we go, look at that. Now I'm going to have just a little bit of blue this side, just to show that there is some blue within the sky. So just clean that brush, and I'm putting in cobalt blue for this. And that's going in that side, and if you don't want it to turn green, just pull it across and leave it. If you want it to turn green, mix it on the paper, you know, but the key to it really is just to pull it across and let it blend itself, because that way, hopefully, doesn't turn green. All being well, just see how far we can go before it does turn green. There we are. Just allow that to soak in. And some of you may have already spotted, this is a brand new brush, or fairly new. My wife said, what would you like for Christmas? So I said, well, I could do with a large mop brush. She said, well, choose one. So I chose the largest I could actually find. But unfortunately, we've still got little, it needs washing properly. But I haven't got time to wash it. I'll just keep using it until all the bits disappear. So that's the story behind that one. I haven't told her, so I hope she doesn't watch the video because I've gone in for the most expensive one there was. Right, okay. Now we'll allow that to soak in and dry. That's basically our background colours, but I'm going to use cobalt blue and a little bit of lemon, cadmium lemon, for some of the distant leafing that we can see in the background. And the reason I'm painting them in now is because it's damp. Just a little bit more yellow in there. Cadmium yellow. There we are, lovely. And there's that tree there that's producing leafing. And these are the branches. They're not by any means the leafing. Well, they are, but they are clumps of leafing hanging there nicely in the background. A bit more yellow, a bit more blue. Just see what we get with this. It's all about putting it on the paper and see what you get, basically. And all being well, it should turn out somewhere near what you're looking for, really. But not always the case. But who cares? We just love to paint. And that's the key. You know, splash the colour on. A bit more blue. Let's have a little bit more blue in that mix. There we are. Just to ring the changes a little. And also that darker colour will be the undersides of these branches. There we are. That's excellent. A bit more blue in there. So we're beginning to get the build up of the distant trees. Good. Yep. Right, now we're looking for the very distant. So we want a bluey grey. So for that we're going to use raw sienna with cobalt blue. Quite a bit of cobalt blues. Don't want to be too heavy with this, but it will give us an illusion of depth at that point with some overhanging lower tree work. There we are, a bit more blue in there. Mustn't be afraid to go blue at this point because we do want that to give a sense of depth. That's still not blue enough for me. Oh, that's blue. Oh yeah, that'll give a sense of depth. Look at that. And particularly with the overhanging trees in the distance. See the way I'm depicting some overhanging trees in the far distance. There we are. So that gives a lovely feeling of depth at the end of the track. You've got to try and produce that feeling of depth. It's vital at this early stage to get a nice bit of depth in the subject. Right, that's still damp, I hope, because let's just continue with this. A bit more blue, a bit more cobalt and cadmium lemon. A bit more blue this time. And I'm going to just hint at, just painting around that, some darker stuff that's going up into there. That's it. I'm just painting around. I'll remove some of that in a second. So this is the start of the lower part of the wooded area. Can you see where it's beginning to form up along behind that foreground area? And we've then got some darker tree work. but we can just see in between that 1 or 2 gaps. So it's just a matter of dropping in these suggested leafing shapes. It's all about suggestion, really, you know, rather than a full depiction of what we can see. Yeah, I think we're getting close to drying there. We're going to have to move on, I think. Let's go the other side and pick up, right, yes, a little bit more of the green into that now. It's all very light. Should get some soft edges there. Yep, that's looking good. And then finally, right into the distance, a little bit of red in our green to give that sort of feeling of undergrowth. And when you do summer colours, summer greens, don't forget about the reds in there, because reds really do enhance the green colours. So a little bit there like that. And what I've done to that side, I'm going to do to that side. There we are. Notice how I've left that little bit of white touch here and there on the tops of that end of the track, purely to get the feeling of light just catching. And it separates the distance from the middle distance. Good. Good, good, good. Right, now we can gradually come forward. Now I'm going to use Windsor blue or Prussian blue, you can use Prussian blue, as my next stage into that area there, along the edge of the track. And notice how I'm painting down into the track to get a jagged edge. There we are. Let's see what it looks like from your position. Oh, right. Just bash on, Colin. You'll get there. Right, there we are. A bit more of that. Right, that's nice there. I like that. That's nice and sort of fresh. And then finally, I'm just allowing a little bit of that light to hit. And I'm just going to swing that around. There we are. I like these little gaps that are left. All gives a feeling of light coming through. Right, now this side, a bit more yellow. And we need a bit of life in this side. Try and do, whatever you do to one side, put some touches on the other side as well. It just pulls all those greens together, really. That's the way I see it, really, I suppose. There we are. That's good. And then we go a bit more colour. There we are. And then we go a little bit more blue. Now, when you use Prussian or Windsor blue, you can put a brown with it and it will still remain blue and or green, unless you add too much brown. If you add too much brown, you just get a dark brown. But we're looking for that sort of earthy brown. There again, just some little touches that side, right along that bottom edge. Try and get the feeling of the undergrowth hanging down along that edge of that track. It's going to be very dark here when we get the light going. Can you see how that's beginning to die back now? It looked very brilliant against the white paper, but it's all beginning to die back. Whew, that's a bit of luck. Right, a bit of that there. And what else have we got? Oh, yeah, I can see what I've got to do across the back. Notice I'm leaving a bead along the top edge, and I'll come to that shortly once we get going onto this. I think we've got a feel of a slope there. Right, a bit more yellow. Let's bang in a bit of yellow. That's a technical term, bang in. You've got to bang it in if you want to get a bit of drama to the whole thing. There we are, look at that. Yeah, and any little patches, little bits of white, leave them. That gives sparkle. It gives that additional sparkle to the whole thing. I've got my mic on, don't worry. Just thought. Right. Now, just before it dries, some little, you know I said about the reds in the greens, just some little sparkles of this red. Well, it's not red, it's actually burnt sienna, but it's a very warm green, but not everywhere, you know. Let's not try and get too bogged down with these, and not too much in the distance. There we are, just like that. It's a little bit heavy. Let's just take it off just a touch. A little bit along the bottom edge there. Good. Well, there you go. Okay, so as you can see, you're beginning to get that feel of depth into that ultimate area in the distance. One last thing before it dries, I'm going to use cobalt blue with raw sienna. Plenty of cobalt, plenty of raw sienna. And let's see what happens here. Right. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint back down to create an uneven edge, because it's slightly damp, it gets slightly blurred. There we are. And leaving one or two little specks and spots on the top edge to denote just some little touches of light on that area. There we are. That's it. And then clean the brush and just draw it up to create undergrowth springing up into the distance. And you can even use a finger. Just thought of that. Just to pull that down. There you go. So you've got that feeling of depth in the distance. Just draw it up a little bit more. Notice how I'm higher on the outside edge. I mean, I'm using that as a base guide, but I'm not religiously just trying to copy it. That's the key to it. Okay then. Right. Well, I think we're somewhere towards the sort of stage where I can think, well, yeah, I put it this way, I've got a chance with this one. You know, it's a good possibility, which I suppose that's why I'm here really, because you need to see a painting. Right, finally, what we're going to do, I'm going to look at the track. Now, you've got perspective there, in as much as you've got depth, but because of the tapering of the track, but also you need to have perspective in your colour. Now, if you notice on the photograph, you've got strong colour in the foreground, very much weaker colour in the distance. Okay, and that weaker colour should be cool and more blue. As you work forward, then you introduce stronger colours. That way you get a feeling of depth. So that is the theory of it. Now let's see how we get on with the practice. Well, let's start off. My favourite mix for these gravelly tracks is really for the red, light red. You could use burnt sienna. It's slightly of an orangey sort of brown. You could use cadmium red right in the foreground. So that's all running around in my head at the moment. So let's see how we get on. Right, first thing you do, cobalt blue, right, very weak with a touch of light red, very, very weak. It is one of those things that got to be quite on the weak side. We certainly do not need any strong colour. And you notice I'm still trying to do it with a large brush, purely because I want it loose. If you use a small brush and a point, you end up start putting in the little touches like that. Well, that's when you lose that impressionist look. Okay, So just pull that across, and that really is not weak enough. So you just put more water in. See it? There we are. Look at that. Now I'm painting across, and that just goes around the corner out the back. That's it. Yeah, mustn't go too high, otherwise it's heading off into the wood. There we are. So that's the blue. Now I'm adding a little bit more red to that, and as you add more paint, add more water. Otherwise it not only changes colour, it also gets darker, which we don't want it too dark at this stage. So we want plenty of water in there, and I'm dragging across. There's another advantage with a large brush, that you can get texture within that track area. Let's just remove that. That's better, so it's all sweeping through. Right, now we want a bit more colour, so a bit more of the light red. There we are, and pull that in. And it's not a bad idea to leave some white paper. There we are. Pull in a bit of the green. You know, if you've still got a little bit of dampness, that's all good. That's exactly what I would hope to see at this stage on this track. And then I'm going to pull in a softer area, like that. So we've got sort of a softer area, a bit of a detailed area, well, impression of gravel. Then as I come forward, I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna. Now, just to give a bit more of a gravelly feel to that. There we are. And then a bit more water, a bit more red, and just flick it through. Now I'm going for the cadmium red. Cool. That's severe. Go on. Be brave. You have to be brave when you're painting. If you don't just push that extra boundary, you never know what you're going to get. Mind you, I've pushed it many times and got a pretty poor result. But once you know it works, then you can do it on other paintings. So every painting is a learning process, you know. Don't try and produce a masterpiece every time you paint, because I don't like to tell you, but it's not going to happen, basically. But all you've got to do, it never happened to me either. But you know, everyone has got to be a learning curve. And if you can really get used to putting on colour freely and loosely, then you will be making good progress. If you're looking to paint impressions and the painting of light, tonal colours, tonal sketches are also very, very good, because you understand form and shape and the tone of everything. Then all you've got to do is introduce colour to those tones, you know, when you mix and paint. So that's pretty much all I need to do for that particular area. Lovely. Right. Let's just see whether I've missed anything. Not really. No, I don't think I've missed anything greatly there. Right. My wife's brush coming very, very handy. It does work, actually. It does actually work. Right. Now I'm going to the one I could afford, which is a little bit smaller, but it works quite well. Oh, and another thing I need to do. Right. What I'm going to do now, I need the ivy running up the trunk. You could use masking fluid to preserve the white paper, but sometimes to me it gets a little too fussy. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to, oh, and by the way, this is of a Bockingford wood pulp paper. I say Bockingford, but this is actually a Canson paper, which you can't buy now, unfortunately. I was lucky enough to get, I used to demonstrate for Canson, and they gave me so much paper that's all I can use. I was actually demonstrating the paper, and they were designing the paper around what I said. Okay, so so we ended up with loads of this paper, but I don't think it ever went into production in the end. They do have another one. Was it Montreal or something like that? That is the version of this on the Canson. But I mean, Bockingford, it's a wood pulp paper. It's not a cotton paper. And the reason I'm babbling on about this is because you can actually lift off colour with a damp brush. I know a lot of artists will say, yeah, but if you can lift off colour, when you overlay another wash on top, are you going to lift off that colour if you don't want to? Well, that's where speed of painting comes in. All you're doing with wood pulp paper, if you go into damp paper, the colour will spread. If you go onto a dry paper, you need clean washes. If you rub at it, then you're lifting back the paint that's already on there and mixing it, so consequently you're getting muddy colours because you're getting too many different colours. Okay, so with the wood pulp, lovely and white, Bockingford, ideal. You know, there's Waterford and all the other papers, but if you have a wood pulp, then it does learn you to overlay colours freshly and cleanly. That's the way I learnt to paint, really, more than anything. Purely because I knew that if I didn't wash the colour on, allow it to dry, and if I wanted to colour out, because I'm going to paint over a lot of this, but hopefully I won't be lifting off colour because I'll just be putting on colour. If you start rubbing at the paper, then you are blending all the colours that didn't actually be absorbed into the paper. So that's the theory, really, of the reason why I'm lifting off, and it just gives me an extra edge to the picture. You know, if you go over an area, I wouldn't recommend using white, although I have done, but it looks a bit chalky if you use white. Purely the white of the paper. I would say that is not as dead white as the pure white edges, but in this case and in most cases you don't need it perfectly white, and if you do, you just have to either paint round it or use masking fluid. So that's that. I'm just going to, oh, and another thing, there's loads of things, but one other thing is that you've got ivy running up the trunk. But what you've got to remember, and I've painted it like that myself, that the ivy is round the outside of the trunk. So when you leave the gaps for the ivy has got to be beyond the trunk. It mustn't be dead level, otherwise the ivy is impaled, is actually into the trunk area. It's actually on the outside. So when I come to paint this, you'll notice that I actually leave the outer edges. So what I'm doing, I'm lifting off a little wider area in places. So there's a little wide area there that's just lifted away. That's where the ivy is hanging on the outside of the trunk. So it is across the front of the trunk, but it's also on the outside edge of the trunk. So let's go beyond that. There we are. So this is all of a sudden the jagged ivy edge of the trunk. It's all very good, isn't it? It's all very technical. But the thing is, once you learn to do these things, and if you paint them enough, you just remember it next time you paint. If you don't, I think really for me, it's remembering a similar subject that you're trying to paint. And if you can remember a similar subject and one that worked, then use those ideas within that different subject. So that's basically, it's really what, see how I've swollen that trunk a little, because that will be the outside edge of the ivy. Not so much there, and perhaps not so much in the lower area. Good. Okay then. What can we do? Yes, right. Now we do have a break very shortly for a little bit of light refreshment, and you can all come up and have a quick look and, you know, see what it really looks like up close. You know, it's not quite as good as it does back there, but never mind. But see what it really looks like close up. If you wish, you can take photographs as well. But just before we do that, I want to put a little bit of the middle distant greenery into the leaf areas. Now I'm going to use this is a synthetic pointed wash colour brush that points extremely well, as you can see, and I'm going to look at painting the green areas there in the distance, the yellows. I've got them in there, but I just want a bit of texture. I don't want too much, but I just want a bit of texture onto those green areas there. And all you do is just dive in. Now this brush needs to be lightly damped. I'm going to use cadmium yellow with a little raw sienna, because the raw sienna will give me, it's a bit dirty raw sienna. I've got a bit of blue in there, I think. Oh, there you go, look at that, look. There we go, that was a bit of luck. Right, a bit more yellow. Right, now I'm going to just give that impression. Now, when you shape a brush to do textured work, don't go bashing in right at the area that's going to be seen, you know. Just see what it does. You could try it on a piece of paper, but just see what it does on the outside where it's going to be more dense. Well, I think we can get away with that. And it's all a matter of getting away with things in this business. There we go. So this is really the overhanging leafing in the distance. And it's really just a matter of shaping the brush. If you can just get that brush shaped in the right sort of way, and notice how I'm putting it on the undersides of those clumps. These are the very light areas, they're not the dark areas. They are all related to that tree, and then I'm going to relate to this tree. This tree will be much stronger. Right, just be careful when you add colour. A bit more yellow this time, because we're working on the tree here. A little closer, and as you come close, the colours need to get a little richer in tone and colour, of course. There we are. Bit of a Bob Ross, isn't it? Eh? You know, tell them what I've got underneath this hat. Right, there you go. Look at that. That's a happy tree. I think that's what I used to say. Right, there we go. And just into that blue area as well, because, you know, we mustn't neglect the outside edges. Just put the odd touch there. Because I've got a band there, so... Oh, look at that. That's interesting. Yeah, there we go. Nice bit of depth there. Why not hang I just like the idea of hanging another branch over there. Don't want too many. You see, the problem is that when you get a nice branch overhanging, you think, oh, that looks nice, we'll have another one. Oh, then we'll have another one. And before you know it, you've got all the same shape of branches overhanging a area that really spoils the whole thing. Probably one would have been sufficient. So, you know, there's a lot of restraint goes on when you paint. Now, I'm just adding a little bit more blue. That would be cobalt blue to this mix. And it's all a matter, well, that was pointed, but because I've only got a small amount of water on there, you end up with more or less a sort of semi-dry brush really. And what I'm going to do, I'm now going to paint little bits along these are the bits in more shade. Oh, there we are. What am I doing using new colour? I've got some here, look. There we go. Look at that. There we are. And these are, don't lose too much of that nice green underneath, because if you do, you end up with oh, and notice how I pulled a branch there, but I continued the other side. Now that is vital. How often have I painted a tree with one colour green down one side and another coloured green down, so one side of the tree is in a different landscape to the other one. So what you do, just like the track, introduce a bit of red there, just a touch there. A little bit of green there, just a touch there. So you pull it all together. Don't paint just one side and then try and remix and copy the other side, because you'll never get the same mixes. Work from one side to the other, and then finally, all being well, and I like that term, all being well, because sometimes things aren't all well, but all being well, we should begin to get the feeling of tree-like shapes or branch shapes. There are. See how we begin to build up a texture now, something that begins to look a little bit more sort of, oh, no, there we go, cobalt blue and burnt sienna. The reason why I'm all of a sudden going cobalt blue and burnt sienna is because I've mixed the wrong colour. It's cobalt blue and Prussian blue. There you go. Look at that. There we are. That's the one we're looking for. Cobalt blue, Prussian blue with a little burnt sienna. Right. Now, this is where I'm going to produce some real dark colour into an area there. And there's this little lifting off again of the colour. Remove some paint from the brush. Pull down. Try and get that textured feel from the grasses in the distance. Just an impression more than anything. And then going nice and dark in that lower area, revealing, a little bit more Prussian in there, revealing the top of the trees or the undergrowth that's around the base of the tree. So that's really all I'm doing here, is creating, and there again, while the mix is still there, just head off into the distance. A little bit of texture here and there. And some of that is just riding up into the lower part of the... There we are. So we've got, see the little light greens, the blues. You can see through that cluster of greenery, which we can see there. It's an impression of what we can see, but that's the way I see it with my eyes, just a cluster of it away into the distance. Okay then. Well, I think we're probably around the halfway stage. So we'll have a short break, and in the second half, I'll show you how to pull this all together, and fingers crossed we will have a finished painting. Okay, let's have a short break.